you, Lee. With regards to the police force, I think one issue with that we can't necessarily ignore is that we are dealing with a substantially corrupt police force. And I just wanted to speak on the conversation around corruption in South Africa and how South Africans have navigated those conversations, and how do we go about navigating them differently in order to prevent corruption, because corruption is a huge player in GBV, just in terms of the allocation of resources, looking at it in that area. So how do we target corruption effectively in this country? How do we change that conversation, change it from a nature of this is what we accept? How do we move forward? I think I'm gonna open up that question to Tafara.
To be honest, I do have some opinions on this matter. However, I also do feel as though my opinions are not grounded in adequate research, nor grounded in enough facts to be able to speak on it accurately. And so I think maybe for those purposes, I'd love to pass that on to another speaker.
Seba, can you please repeat the question?
I wanted us to talk about how do we confront corruption as SA citizens and change our conversation around that and our acceptance around corruption. All right. Anyone else want to take it on before I assign it?
I'll jump.
All right, Peter.
I think first of all, we need to stop being so nonchalant about it. I think especially in the last 2 months, and it's a joke now, but guys, how do we be so calm knowing that approximately 100 billion just gone like that? Like everyone is so calm about it. We read about it, we're like, ha, and then next day we're like, that's life. They know that we're lax about it. We need to stop being lax about it. Local government elections are coming up. We need to start removing these people with vicious force. We need to start demanding more in terms of results, because the biggest problem, and Malema said it as well, who decided that you can steal money from the state and just retire or resign, and that's okay? People just corrupt, steal money, leave. So we as a public need to start demanding that, these people need to get convicted, arrested, and face serious crimes. Otherwise, our attitude needs to just change, especially when it comes to small things, I think. Even in our individual councils, we all in our councils probably have some more than others, but we all see things that, no, this is not right. Surely this thing cannot take this long. Let's go inquire, because inquiries are what drive investigations. Going to your local, something that I didn't know that my dad told me, if you go to your Sizakala center and you just ask them, there's a contract that's going on. How long is it supposed to be? And you launch a formal inquiry, they'll give you a form to sign. If not, you can go to the municipal offices and give it to your councillor and inquiry. Drive that attention to the issue, because that corruption is starving, our citizens, and especially the fight against GBV, because then money is taken away from those causes to patch holes elsewhere.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else want to add any comment on that question before we move on? All right. So I think we should be getting to the time closer to wrapping up. And I wanted to ask this question of responsibility. And what exactly are our lines between personal and necessary responsibility for activism, and how accountable we should be in our society for each and every single one of us carrying out these responsibilities? I want to open that up to the entire panel.
Well, I think maybe I can start that conversation. You know what? I think that, and this is not a regular thing. This is not a regular thing, but it is something that happens nonetheless. From the responsibility perspective, as people who are constantly engaging with gender-based violence, people who are constantly being fed news and information that is of a gruesome nature. I mean, we find stories on Twitter circulating about a woman who was hanged while she was pregnant. or a young girl who was stabbed 3 times by her boyfriend. That kind of stuff can really dull your senses because you need to be constantly engaging with this issue. And so I do believe that being cautious that we being cautious against stopping ourselves from holding our own selves accountable is the first step. And that's why I say it doesn't happen often, but it does happen, whereby because you've constantly engaged with the issue, you feel as though perhaps you're beyond reproach. And I think really it's so important as people who constantly engage to recognize that you're not beyond reproach. And I say this to men specifically. As a man who would call himself a feminist, it is very dangerous for you to believe that you're no longer a potential rapist or someone who could potentially sexually assault someone, right? That's the first place to start. Because if you can't do that to yourself, how can you hold others accountable? Or how can you really put that responsibility on others?
So, given what you've just said now, Tafara, I'm going to be very controversial, and I ask everybody to please be considerate and also to please be vulnerable. And I'm going to ask frankly to every single one of my panelists in 30 seconds, what is the role of women in gender-based violence? Slee, you're the first one on my screen, so I'm going to start with you. Short and sharp.
So the role of women in gender-based violence, I think, to be honest, to bring in more of a testimonial perspective, because I think a lot of times, as we pointed out, that the statistics are mainly that women are the victims and men are the perpetrators, the majority of these statistics. So when I mean by sort of a testimonial kind of information or I think with that, it's almost like bring in your experience and trying to also for others to understand why is it that this particular issue is very daunting and very traumatizing for you. Maybe it might be a direct or indirect experience, and also you must understand that a lot of the times when it comes to GBV, it can be small, it can be large, it could be just, you know, a guy whistling at you, minor things that contributes to it. So yeah, I hope that was
thanks for that. Given, let me jump into you. Given, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. I just wanted to say that I agree with Slee. Women's roles for me, I think just 2 ways. One, testimonial, like Slee said, but also I think women's role is much more micro than macro, because gender-based violence needs structural change, and then men of allowing that change to happen. Men are the ones who need to allow themselves to be called out, you know? So when I say more of a micro level, I just say the little innocuous things that women may do to, for the lack of a better word, be patriarchal princesses. But outside of that, I think as far as addressing the structural problem that is gender-based violence, that is a burden that should be incurred by men.
Thanks for that. Boipelo, coming to you.
I agree that it's a larger structural change that needs to occur, and men need to allow themselves to be called out. And when women do call them out, they should listen to understand and not immediately become defensive. But I believe that the role of women is to create a safe space for other women and constantly speak out when they see injustices. Because if you keep quiet, then it will perpetuate. Yeah.
Granted. Thanks for that, Boipelo. Mpilo, coming to you. The role of women in gender-based violence.
I think first and foremost to do a lot more calling out, as uncomfortable as it may be as a guy. And sometimes I think what Tafara as well said is that, you know, as a guy, just because you've taken a more feminist approach, not be creeped out in terms of like when someone brings something up to you, and you know, you not be sort of there like, oh, I didn't think I could do this as a feminist, you know, is to take the criticism, learn from it, and be understanding. So I think the role of women would be to keep calling men out, You know, don't shy away from it.
Although, can I just say, like, sometimes calling people out, you get fatigued. It's such a emotionally draining thing to do all the time, because a lot of the times when we call men out, we call them out because it's triggered us, and it's triggered like an experience that has happened like so many times. So although I do agree that women should be speaking out, I don't think we're allowed to rest. When emotionally, when our women are allowed to rest, every day we're calling out people. When do we rest emotionally with this topic? Yeah.
And I think to answer that, I guess, I don't know, I'm jumping, but I'll answer. For me, this is a personal, it's a personal
Yeah,
thing. Because,
I'm also just...
you know, it's a personal, because for me, okay, as a person, I'm an abrasive person. That's my personality. I'm working to fix it. But oftentimes I will not know, because I've grown up in a thick-skinned environment, so I will not often know that, you know, I've wronged someone or stepped on someone's toes, only until afterwards when I'm thinking about, like, hey, you know what, maybe that wasn't so right. So very few times will I go back and apologize because I didn't know. So it's a very tough role to be like, you know what, women, just come to me and tell me. But I think you don't have to necessarily call out men, you know, but you can definitely not stop bringing it up and saying, hey, you know what you said last week, that wasn't, I didn't cover it, you know. But I do understand, obviously, these are triggering things. You know, how can you ask someone to stop harassing you nicely? You know, we have to be fair. Wherever you can be nice, you should be nice, but where you need to be aggressive to get the point home, because also an important part is sometimes when women are nice about it, like, hey, you know, you may have come off a little bit rapey, guys, straight up defensive, and now it's a fight, you know, because women face opposition from calling out men anyway. So, you know, what's the point in being nice? But I think where you can be, it goes a longer way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Tafara, we can get your quick 30 seconds on it as well. If you can just go ahead.
Okay, so Lux, I love your question. I do love your question, and I think it's, for me, the reason why it resonates is because I can't address it directly. I would really love to speak as to the role that women have. But look, to be honest, I really believe that women have exhausted themselves. They've done everything that they could possibly do. However, for the sake of actually just trying to answer your question, I do agree with Slee in terms of the fact that women should take one role that women could have is a testimonial kind of role. But unfortunately, we will never really get to that point until men take it upon themselves to create a safe space for women to then bring those testimonies forward. Because unfortunately, if a woman has a story and she feels as though by either A, telling someone about it, or as Boipelo said, B, calling someone out about it, she actually might be put in danger as a result. And so I really think that women have done what they can do. It really is it's up to men to actually take this battle forward.
Interesting there. Thanks, Tafara. So we're beginning to wrap up. Like my co-facilitator said, I'm going to ask one question to all the panelists, but I'm going to attribute it in different sectors of society. And then after everybody's answered, I'm going to give all of our panelists and my co-facilitator as well just a 30-second wrap up and thanks, and then we'll wrap up the session. So just to let you know, we're almost done and we can get back to Sunday evening. My question is, and again, I'm going to address each panelist regarding a different sector of society. The question to the sector that I'm asking you is, one rational, practical solution that you feel right now could help, could assist, could prevent, could diverge the scourge, could encourage, could fix the problem of gender-based violence. Just one practical solution, because I think, you know, we all want to change the world. And we all have bright ideas and we all have these wonderful solutions. But I think if we focused on something right now in front of me, in my environment, in what I can do in my community, in my society, I think that helps. So Slee, I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to say, in that context, the industry, the environment I've given you is business. In business, The corporate world. No pressure.
Okay. No pressure. So I'm coming from the perspective of men. So essentially, I would say the solution is men speaking to other men. And the reason why I'm saying this is because, as my panelists rightly so have said, that women have always been expressing themselves, and they've always been basically stating that, listen, this is wrong, you can't do A, B, C, and D, or women need equal positions in business and so forth and so forth. But the issue is that, you know, a lot of the times men listen to other men. And I think that's where we have to bring in the approach of brothers speak to each other, where men educate other men and say to men that, you know, is this fair in a business approach? If you, for instance, promote a man who, yes, may have certain skills and abilities, but then that particular woman has far more education and far more skills to be promoted. Is this actually fair? May perhaps question that, bring that into discussions when you have meetings, when you have these corporate sort of conferences. Bring the discussion of fairness, bring the discussion of, you know, equality within the business as men speaking to other men. So that could be a solution.
Magic. Thanks for that, Slee. Given, I'm going to jump straight into you, and I'm going to say, in the NPO and NGO sector.
Luckily, I mean, this is what we already do as Swanke Lux, engaging men and boys, particularly boys. People, in this instance, boys and men are not born violent. And part of the work, part of what we believe in the work that we do is that it is important then that we engage boys. And that is why we are part of a consortium called Men Engage, where we administer projects with young men and young boys. And, you know, the change, to be honest with you, because there are a plethora of social factors that contribute to gender-based violence, the change is incremental. But I can tell you, with the work that we've done with men and especially boys, there have been testimonials that are promising, and there have been testimonials that are encouraging for us in the NGO sector that we are on the right path by engaging young men and boys.
Thanks for that, Given. Boipelo, I'm coming straight to you, and I'm asking, in the home environment.
I think in the home environment, there's different levels at which people can cause change. So parents, number one, the way that they raise the sons and the way that they speak to their daughters as well, because what we neglect is that the way when our mothers talk to our daughters, our sons are also listening about the way that women should be treated, the role of a woman, and the worth of a woman. Subconsciously, they're listening, and the subconscious effects are there, and vice versa, the way that fathers talk to their sons and mothers talk to their sons, and the women are also subconsciously taking in all those cues about how they should be interacting with each other. So we need to be really conscious about the way we raise our sons and our daughters as well. And also, as siblings, as we grow up, we see the world differently to our parents who might have a more patriarchal view. And so as siblings who know better, we should also, siblings and daughters, teach our parents that mom, actually, that's not okay. And our brothers as well. For me, I've made it like a huge effort with my brother to understand consent and to understand women's rights and women's rights issues, the way in which he should be interacting with women his age, women who are in positions of power, not to undermine him. So just across different understandings as children who are more exposed to a different understanding of the world, and as parents as well. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Mpilo. Mpilo, coming to you. We did touch on it previously before, but in a slight notion. So I'm going to throw education at you. One solution in the high school environment, one solution possibly in the university and tertiary space.
In the high school space, we need to give education that is wholehearted, well-rounded, and not shy away from what it is. We needn't be afraid in the way that we educate, so we can't shy away from hiding the fact that all of this is a highly sensitive, age dependent. So as they get older in the high school, we need to educate them more in terms of the roles that they play in sexual intercourse and in their sexual relationships. In varsity space, what we need to do is actually, now you're at an age where you have been taught, hopefully, and understand these things, to engage. Because in the varsity space is where you really come to mix in a more extravagant way than in high school. At varsity, you are having more sex, you're meeting more people, so you need to actually now engage in good spaces, So more societies geared at conversative consultation need to take place amongst men, especially in boys' residences, so that everyone is on the same page and that we're playing all for the same team. So there's no one who can say that I didn't know, or I just wish that someone had told me. Thank you.
Great, thanks for them, Mpilo. And Tafara, the easiest sector for you, I'm going to ask you in terms of socio-political.
Socio-political. All right. I'm going to try my best to address that. I think that there are a couple of different things that one must be cognizant about when they are trying to create solutions, right? Firstly, they need to be cognizant about the context in which people find themselves in. So, for example, me telling you now that from a socio-political perspective, implementing some kind of tax that is going to solve the situation is not correct, because there are people who may not be able to afford that, right? That's obviously a very loose solution. And so I do believe that being cognizant of the context is extremely important. So given the fact that majority of South Africans are struggling from an employment perspective, particularly Black South Africans, right? And so you've got two issues now. You've got a traditional sense, right? And then you've got the monetary issues that are playing themselves out. And so, yeah, essentially that's kind of that's kind of the groundwork I'm trying to lay before I give an answer. And so basically what I'm trying to say is, if you're trying to address an issue, guys, I'm sorry, I'm actually speaking nonsense. Let me not lie. I'm speaking nonsense. I'm speaking nonsense. I can't lie to you. I have no answer for you on
that. Safe space, Tafara. It was a loaded one, and like I said, I left the easiest for last. So perhaps in wrapping up, I'll ask each of my panelists, and I really do ask you to be brief, because we've gone over here, just literally 30 seconds on your final thoughts, your final suggestions, and perhaps final solutions into this ongoing problem. I don't think it's something that's going to end tomorrow, and would be naive to think so. But I think conversations like this are a good starting point. So I'll ask my panelists, and again, I do ask you kindly, 30 seconds in terms of what do you think we can do to better fix this problem? I'm going to start with you, Given, and ask for your 30 seconds, please, sir.
We're lucky that, I guess, we're having this conversation at a time where the NSP on gender-based violence and femicide has been finalized. I think now the ball is very much in the government's courts to ensure that it is effectively implemented, and on the topic of even corruption, to ensure that all checks and balances are transparent, and that practicality is better than the theoretical. So we have the document. It's up to the government now to ensure that this NSP that we've been calling for years is effectively implemented.
Thanks for that, Given, and thanks again for your time. Mpilo, coming straight to you.
We need to create more societies where men can engage, actively participate in action, their activism. It's not enough for us to just tweet, retweet, like, share, comment, subscribe. We need to action the change of the do better that we talk about.
Mm.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Mpilo, and thanks for your time as well, for joining us this evening. Boipelo, coming straight to you, ma'am.
The solution for me would be education on gender-based violence, having a justice system that actually is on the side of victims and not the perpetrators, and just mental support for victims of gender-based violence. Yeah.
Thank you, and thanks for your contribution towards this evening's conversation with Boipelo. Slee, coming straight to you, ma'am.
Yes, so I would say that women continue to be the spearheads in feminist movements. And what I mean by that is continue to address the issue of GBV and men as allies, and that men being supporters of GBV. So what I mean by supporters is that, you know, whatever mission that the woman is trying to accomplish, you need to make sure that you support her and become that supporting crutch to help her accomplish that mission. So in that sense, communication, listening as well is very important, that men can listen to women, and creating a space where you can be able to collaborate with one another to ensure that we have a workable solution.
Thanks for that, Slee, and yeah, thanks for your contributions to this evening. Really insightful. So we really do appreciate your time. My co-facilitator, Rabetwe, your final thoughts, please, before I get to Tafara.
I just would like to end with a quote from one of our favorite rappers, Tupac. And it just says, "I wonder why we take from our women, why we rape our women. Do we hate our women? I think it's time to kill for our women, time to heal our women, be real to our women. And if we don't, we'll have a race of babies that will hate the ladies that make the babies. And since a man can't make one, he has no right to tell a woman when and where to create one. So will the real man get up? I know you're fed up, ladies, but keep your head up. It's a long fight, but we'll get through it."
Short, sharp, powerful, and highly relevant. Thanks for being my co-facilitator this evening and running the session with me, ma'am. Really did enjoy our time together. Tafara, I'm coming to you last, and I'm hoping that you're going to mention, in terms of solutions, an app that I'm hearing about.
Wonderful, wonderful. Before I do get there, I want to redeem myself very quickly. I was a little bit flustered when you asked the question, but the solution finally came to me. Actually, just following off of what Rebeswe said, I would also just like to pop a young quote there, one that really rings true for me. I can't remember who it's by, but it goes as follows. All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing, right? And I think that really applies to the situation we find ourselves in. And to kind of allude to the socio-political context in which you spoke of, addressing traditional norms. I think Boipelo touched on it beautifully when she said that we need to keep what's good and discard what's not helpful at all. Addressing issues such as the fact that men perceive women as objects of pleasure. That is, I mean, in its most simplest form, an issue that we can address. And that is also very community-based, which now goes into the application that I was speaking of. And so, yeah, just to kind of give everyone a little bit of a context, the application that myself, Paimo Modiko and Tumero Modiko are working on is called Masidi. It's an emergency-based application that caters towards the protection of women through alerting nearby emergency services to their location and situation. And then there's also a community aspect, which is essentially serving to educate the community by keeping them abreast of positive women news, as well as keeping them in touch with different organizations that do good work. And so, yeah, please keep your eyes open. I will do a little bit of selfish promotion. The Masidi page on Instagram is at MasidiZA. So if you could please follow and keep in touch with all the information that's going through there.
Absolutely brilliant. Sounds wonderful, sounds necessary, sounds like something that is much needed. So we do wait in great anticipation to see where it goes, and I'm sure the Muse Afrika team will be sharing your details and progressions as you go forth. Ladies and gentlemen, it was meant to be an hour. It's just after 2.5 hours later in terms of our conversation. I think what's important and what we've seen from the chats that are coming through is that, 1, it's important to have these conversations. 2, they need to keep going. 3, they need to be resolutions based. And it is very interesting to hear from, in particular, the youth that we have amongst us here. So I think from my side, and certainly on behalf of my facilitator Riabetu as well. It's been an absolute pleasure. I will now hand over to the Muse Afrika team to send us off. But in terms of our panel conversation today, in terms of solutions-based discussions to gender-based violence, it's a wrap from us.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having the conversation with us. I'm gonna hand over to Tabby now, and I think she's available. Not too sure.
I'm here.
All right.
I think Chito wanted to ask some questions first. Chito?
Okay, yes, we had questions, yeah. We had a few questions come in through the chat section. A few of the ones that came up earlier were answered, but here's one that popped up not too long ago. Eileen asked, we have materialism and willing blessings all over the place. Are they not inadvertently shaping views, those of women in terms of what it takes to achieve success? So like men's views in terms of the accessibility of women. Doesn't this contribute negatively to the whole GBV issue? Would anyone like to comment?
I did respond to that one because I thought we were going to run out of time, and I hated to see the question go. But
yes, I know you.
Yeah, but I'll just read it out. So when it comes to the impact of blessers, it comes through when you look at club/group culture. We need to actively take these ideas and principles with us, the ones that we come through in these conversations, the ones that we learn from GBV, and we need to take them everywhere with us. We can't suddenly enter different spaces and like completely forget what we've learned in terms of consent, coercion, all those things, and GBV, and then we move to a club and we completely forget about that. Because what the blesser materialism situation does, it delegitimizes the movement against exploitation. And a lot of these blessers do perpetuate the things that we talk about. So we need to actively phase them out of the scene. We have to make it awkward for them to exist and what they do. That's the only way we're going to get rid of them. We need to take those people whoever delegitimizes the movement needs to be, I hate to say eradicated, but they need to be sidelined.
Would any of our other panelists like to comment on the question?
I think that we need to interrogate the need of why is it that women do turn to blessers in the first place? And it's just that I think that relates to the socio-economic position that women find themselves, that if you can't support yourself, what else are you supposed to do? And that's the unfortunate position that women have in place, and that you have to support yourself and put yourself in positions that are compromising to you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with Bello, because I think the issue is that we have a sense of encouragement as well from other people, where they would say that, or look at this particular person, this person has money, this person has so forth and so forth, and he can help you to, for instance, pay for your studies or give you airtime and so forth. So I think the issue with the blesser and blessee narrative is that it again kind of confirms that men don't exactly see younger women as their daughters or as their nieces, or those kind of things. Because I think a lot of the times when it comes to racial solidarity, we always have to, as Black women, be like, our brother kind of thing died because of racism, those sort of things. We kind of have this sort of connotation with the idea of brothers and uncles and fathers and so forth, that this is a father, this is a possible brother who died because of racism. But men don't exactly see that. They don't even see their African sisters as this is their sister. Instead, they would associate, for example, a younger woman to somebody who is for pleasurable means, so objectifying that woman. So essentially, it does contribute to GBV, the idea of, I guess, understanding how the blesser sees the blessee, and that they see them as an object of pleasure than somebody who is, a possible daughter or somebody's daughter, so forth.
Well, more or less, Most of the questions were already answered, and thank you again for answering this last question. From me, that's about it. Thank you again for engaging fully with all the questions we had for you, and we really appreciated having you. Thank you to our panelists.
Okay, thank you so much, Chito, for those questions. Thank you so much to our panelists. Tonight has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Boipelo, Nobu, Slee, Given, Mpilo, and Tafara, and to our facilitators, Seba and Lucky, and of course to our wonderful audience. And we want to thank all the panelists and facilitators who have taken part in the whole series. This has been such a success because we as the youth, through these conversations, have learned so much from our various panelists who have really helped us to unearth some real issues. So thank you so much to all of you. As we've discussed throughout the series, gender-based violence is a societal problem for women and men alike. This is a problem that is a result of the patriarchy, toxic masculinity, apartheid, power imbalances, all things in which women are at a disadvantage that makes them vulnerable to gender-based violence. So where to from here? We as Muse Afrika are going to continue to apply our efforts to educational conversations like this for us as the youth to arm ourselves with information and knowledge that will help us to play a positive role in changing the direction of this scourge. So I would like to extend an invitation to you, the youth of our generation, to continue to get involved in this journey to fight gender-based violence. And if you could continue this journey with us by following us on Instagram at muse.africa for further details on how to get involved. But in the meantime, thank you so much to everyone and take care.